Hey there, true believers. You're tuned into Baxter Building Radio via the Negative Zone feed, and welcome to episode 40 of the Fantastic Four Fancast. My name is Nate Charles. I am your host, and as always, I am joined by my co-host. His name is Shane Murray. How are you doing tonight, Shane?
Warming up, I guess. How about
War
yourself?
yeah, it has been warming up out there, hasn't it? It's kind of nice after the frigid wave that we had over the past month.
2 months.
Yeah, I don't like talking about time. It just blends together anymore.
But yeah, what have you been up to since the last time we talked?
Oh, just physical therapy for my knee and working on stuff for the show in May and editing last week's show, which more or less just segues into editing the following week's show. But I have been diving into, in the very little free time I have, into catching up on season two of Fallout. And that so far has been phenomenal. So really enjoying this season. As a fan of the games and of New Vegas in particular, there's a lot to be happy about with this.
What episode you finish on?
Right now, I'm three episodes in. I think I'm going into episode four, or maybe I'm going into
Oh,
episode five. They had just gotten to New Vegas. I don't want to say too many spoilers if anybody
yeah,
hasn't
okay.
watched it yet. So,
Yeah,
but yeah, great show. I would say that I think that this may even be better than the first season. I really love the first season. So let's keep that train rolling.
yeah. I've really loved the second season, so but that's it. Just Fallout and recording.
Man, I do not have time for anything else. I did manage to read my comics that I picked up last week. I get to the shop about once every 2 weeks. So I had maybe about 11 books that I needed to get through. Particular highlights were, actually this is good because I will say that I have been really enjoying these 20th Century Fox Studios crossovers that Marvel has been doing as of late. The first issue of Planet of the Apes versus Fantastic Four, I thought was pretty fun. That I want to say I read 2 weeks ago. This past weekend, I finished Alien versus Captain America, and that was awesome in like every regard. So, if anybody has not checked out Alien versus Captain America, highly recommend that. And I think that Planet of the Apes versus Fantastic Four is, or it might be meets Fantastic Four, but that book, I feel like with the opening issue is going to live up to the standard that's been set there.
I don't want to talk about backlogs.
Oh, what are you drowning in about 50 books in a binder again?
Uh,
Man, if we had a video option for this podcast, true believers out there would see that you are holding up a stack that I want to say is about 7 inches high.
yeah. It's about as tall as a softball. Yeah, it's pretty massive. And yeah, Skin Breaker 6 came out, so I did read 5 and 6.
Nice. I've been really enjoying Skinbreaker.
But that's the small pile I finished. This is the big giant pile I have to get through.
So you got through an inch and a half, and now you got 7 inches to get through.
Yeah, yeah. Sometime.
I am already regretting talking about these stacks in
Inches.
length. Yeah, yeah. This
I didn't get to read anything last weekend. I didn't even get to get to the shop last weekend, so I had to pick up last week's stuff and this week's stuff. I try to go pretty much if I can Friday after work, but I didn't get to go last week because we ended up going down to visit some friends down around the Lancaster area, and yeah, that was a trip. And
Oh, what? It wasn't nearly as fun as playing Magic the Gathering for 7 hours.
I would have much rather played Magic the Gathering for 7 hours. We did get one game of United in, and you know how you just te can tell someone's just not like really vested in what you're doing.
Yeah.
They just weren't vested in what we were doing. So like they only like they figured out the mechanics by like turn four, but they weren't like enjoying it. It's kind of like a bummer.
To each their own. That being said, I mean, I don't really think that Marvel United is a game that's that hard to pick up on, at least at the base level. Granted, there are a ton of expansions that add a lot more different mechanics to it, but yeah.
Yeah, I played one round of that and one round of Dixit, and that one didn't go over any better. And that one is like you just use a word to describe a picture, and then everyone just tries to guess which one's yours. But you don't want everyone to guess which one's yours because if they do, then you don't get any points, but everyone else gets points. It's like a weird like you need people to vote for you, but you don't need everyone to vote for you type thing. The people we were playing with just aren't. I don't think that's their type of that's their cup of tea is sitting down and playing like a board game.
Well, that's a shame. But again, to each everyone's own. Not everyone's board game people.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Just taken aback, I guess, because they always keep talking about the wanting to try D&D, and like if you can't get vested in playing a game that takes 3 seconds to learn,
Yeah, good luck with Dungeons and Dragons, man.
I'm not gonna sit down and try to teach you a game that has thousands of mechanics. Even like the base level mechanics is still like way more. So it is what it is. That happened. So I did beat the storm home, left at like 5:30 Sunday morning because they got pounded down that area. They got like 12 and a half inches of snow that day, where we got like mostly rain up here. So
Yikes.
yeah, when I woke up at 5, it was like already coming down pretty steadily. So I woke everyone up, you know, the party of four I have. And I was like, hey, I don't care if y'all fall back asleep in the car. I just need you to get your butts in the car so we can go that way.
That was roughly around the time I was leaving work that day. And yeah, I mean, my car when I went out was covered with a sheet of ice and then snow on top of it. So you might have just hit things in the sweet spot to get home.
Yeah, yeah. Going through like the Pottsville Hamburg area that was covered in snow. But when I got home, we had like 2 inches of snow on the road up here. But then at 10 o'clock it switched to rain and it just took it all away. So when it switched back over to snow later that night, it never sat on anything besides like cars. Everything else just baked off. But speaking of baking, this is a hot issue.
Oh my gosh. For once, you're handling the segue. This is a momentous day. And I mean, how appropriate that this is a hot issue, so to speak, considering that we are covering Human Torch Volume 3, Number 5 today, which was cover dated for October of 2003, but released on August 20th of 2003, with a cover price of $2.50. Shane, I went on to pricecharting.com prior to our recording tonight, and I was able to get what an ungraded copy of this book has sold for at maximum, at least recorded maximum. Would you care to play the Price is Right today and attempt to guess what that has gone for without going over?
Yeah, let's do it. $36.
$36. Did you and I read the same book?
Yeah.
Um, Sir, you are over by about a factor of 10,
You said graded or ungraded?
ungraded.
I thought you said graded. Ungraded. No, ungraded, I would say it's like 225.
You are under. The highest recorded price for an ungraded copy of this book is $3.42.
Okay. Nah, I'm so used to you saying graded first. That's just my brain doing that automatic tick. So there's not a recorded graded one for this one
There is not.
for good reason.
I don't know. Let's be real. This is an early 2000s issue. It may still have its day in the sun. Give it another 10, 20 years.
One day could be a key issue. You're right.
Or maybe not. But it's fun to see what the future holds, right?
Yep.
Our creative team for today's issue is writer Carl Kessel, penciler Scotty Young, inkers are Joe Sung and Pierre-Andre Derry. Coloring duties were handled by Studio F. Letterer was Corey Pettit. Assistant editors Mark Sumerak and Andy Schmidt. Editor Tom Brevoort. Editor-in-chief Joe Casada. President Bill Jemis. And listed as the keepers of the flame, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. Shane, would you like to hear a synopsis of today's issue via Marvel Unlimited?
I would love to hear a synopsis of today's issue.
Who is the combustion killer? And what pyro powers does he have that Johnny Storm doesn't?
That's it?
That is it.
Man, small and to the point.
Yeah, I don't like this one. And we can get into it a little bit later. That's fine. But yeah, once we finish up with this issue, we'll come back and touch on the synopsis. I don't really want to spoil things for our dramatization here. The cover for today's issue was done by Scotty Young and Pierre-Andre Derry. Shane, would you like to take us through that, please?
Absolutely. So the cover is Johnny in his beautiful leather jacket and leaning against a wall with one hand with a little fireball in it. It looks very ominous in shadow. Has it looks like a window reflection shining on him slightly going against the wall behind him. Compared to all the other covers in this series, this one's very, you can almost tell that this book is going to have a different vibe going into it. It's a it's a darker cover. But you have Human Torch across the top with that number 4 going all the way across. Then it has the title of this book, Burn Part 5. Anything you'd like to add, sir?
I'm of two minds of this cover. So like you said about the shadow of the window frames on the brick wall behind Johnny and how that kind of puts him in shadow, and then you get the illumination of the flame that's in his hand. All beautiful colors and everything. And for the vibe of the story, which honestly I feel like the cover is a bit darker than what the vibe of the whole story has been, but this is more or less a detective story. And I feel like this cover definitely emphasizes that you're getting a Human Torch detective story, maybe even like a detective noir vibe to it.
Yeah, yeah. I would agree 100% that this has a very noir feel to the cover.
On the other hand, this is the early 2000s. This is early 2000s fashion. Johnny Storm looks like he's being pulled right off of a CD cover for the Backstreet Boys or NSYNC. At this point, he could literally be saying that he's tearing out my heart or something, and I would wholeheartedly believe it. So,
Even with
yeah,
that soul patch going on there?
especially with that soul patch going on there. It's not a soul patch. It's literally the shadow from his nose going over his chin,
Yeah,
but
I
it
know.
doesn't help.
I know it's the shadow. I was just calling it the soul patch because it was like, man, someone was thinking that he had one and did not.
But yeah, I don't know. He looks very Millennium Boy Band on this.
Mm. I feel like if you throw a backwards hat on him, he can. This is a Limp Bizkit cover.
Oh, you are so right, though. But Johnny is supposed to be hip to the times, so hey, they nailed it. Can't complain too much. It is of the times. And when we open to our first page, we are of course greeted by our recap page, which reads, previously, Johnny Storm is the youngest member of the world-famous Fantastic Four, with the powers and temperament of fire itself. Impulsive, restless, and thrill-seeking by nature, the Torch doesn't need to wait for the rest of the FF to have adventures. He can get into trouble all by himself. Years ago, shortly after gaining his powers and while still in high school, an enraged Johnny accidentally burned his classmate Mike Snow badly. Snow never told anyone what really happened to him and never wanted to see Johnny again. Until recently, when Snow, now a fireman, saw a coworker die before his eyes, inexplicably bursting into flames like a human torch. Then a fireball zigzagged down a street pursuing an intended victim, and Johnny and Snow formed an uneasy alliance to find whomever was responsible for the mysterious blazes. Right on cue, they were attacked by Firefox, an inventor gone postal after the FDNY snubbed her work. End of story. Or so it would seem. And we turn to page 2, the first one of our story proper, and we are greeted with a panel where Lieutenant Sean Matson is flanked by Fireman Mike Snow and Han. And he throws a finger up in the air and says to Johnny in regards to the subdued Firefox, take her mask off. What? I want to see her face. I want to see the face of the person who killed one of my men. And we see Johnny flamed on in silhouette with Firefox subdued. She is on her knees, hands behind her back, while Matson and three of his firefighters stand before her. Now, for anyone who is interested, we have covered parts 1 through 4 of this storyline previously. So before going any further, if you haven't, I would highly recommend going back and listening to episodes 23, 27, 32, and 36. Shane, for the benefit of the true believers, could you remind them what Firefox looks like?
Oh, Firefox has a full bodysuit, completely black, has these red goggles, very reminiscent of like Mr. Freeze or just like welding like goggles. Has a backpack with a bunch of hoses running off of it, which is supposed to be Firefox's technology for how she is controlling her flame and keep setting everything ablaze.
And Johnny responds, Firefox is just some crazy lady, Lieutenant. Mad scientist type out to put a hurt on the fire department. Ask Snow. He heard it all. There's no reason. Sure, there is, hero. In fact, there's nothing I'd like better than to be unmasked by these fine gentlemen. Mind you, I'm obviously restrained and certainly not giving my consent, so it would be a clear violation of my constitutional right to privacy, something I'm sure my lawyer would have a field day with. And Matson has heard enough and just says, get her out of here. So where do you take her now, Johnny? Rikers? Asked Mike Snow. No, there's another place, a secret place, better equipped to handle supervillains. Never heard of it. Really? With all the supervillains you've captured? Wait, maybe you not knowing and it being secret is somehow connected. I'll look into that. Get back to you. And Johnny scoops Firefox up in his arms and takes off into the sky as the firefighters watch him depart. And he lands on a rooftop several blocks away, where he sets Firefox down in front of a stairwell. And Firefox says, well, must say I expected something a bit more high tech, more cutting edge to hold a bad girl of my caliber, Johnny. Suits you perfectly. Get inside. And Firefox enters what initially appeared to be a stairwell, and now it just looks to be maybe like a graffiti covered storage shed on top of this building. And she says, in a bit of a mood, are we? After all I've done for you. Now, where would you say I rate on the villain scale, Johnny? 10 being Doctor Doom and 1 being, oh, Paste Pot Pete. A league of your own. Your clothes are in here. Get out of the costume. I will if you will. I'll wait outside. And Johnny steps out, and what is he doing in this panel here, Shane?
He's blowing fire rings. It's like letting steam off. That's his version of smoking a cigarette, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it's very reminiscent of what fire eaters do, right?
Yeah.
And after a while, Firefox, as she was called, exits this shed. But who is it, Shane?
None other than Sheila.
And who is Sheila, to remind our true believers?
Sheila is the reporter that follows Johnny around like a hawk, and she is a tabloid writer. So she ruined his ride back in what, issue 2?
Yes.
She just pops up at the most inconvenient time in Johnny's life. But for once, Johnny found a use for her.
And can you describe what Sheila Donner is wearing here now that she is out of her Firefox attire?
Yeah, so Sheila Donner comes out of the room and she is wearing sweatpants and a crop top.
And she has a red gym bag thrown over her shoulder, and she says, now, your little snit aside, that was my idea of fun. Can see why you like it so much, Johnny. Could get to be a habit, putting on a costume like that, playing with forces beyond mortal ken. You're a lot of things, Donner. Annoying, unethical, and untrustworthy. But you're no supervillain. You don't even have superpowers. I created all of Firefox's Flame FX. And the only reason you didn't get crisp during that little show is because your costume, which I supplied, is made from fireproof unstable molecules. That's what I'm saying. We work bloody well together, don't we? No, the only reason we're working together is you gave me no choice. And what Sheila means is that she threatened to be an absolute nuisance to the firefighters that Johnny was working with and hound them into oblivion. And Johnny acquiesced to her request to be involved. I think mostly because Johnny was afraid that the public might find out the history between him and Mike Snow and how he was responsible for how scarred Mike is. Sheila continues. Listen, mate, I'm a reporter. I see a story, I go after it. I take risk, I push the envelope. I do whatever it takes to get the job done. Sound familiar? Maybe it isn't so much you don't like me, and more you don't like I'm so much like you. And Johnny does not take this well. His eyes flame up as he says, You? Me? Night and day, Donner. But Sheila puts her arm around Johnny's shoulders and brings him in close and says, Sounds like different sides of the same coin to me. Not meaning we should be lovers, Johnny. You couldn't keep up. We just need each other, is all. This one time, at least. But we do agree whoever's causing these bizarro blazes is most likely one of those firemen you know, Johnny. And with Firefox caught, the real burner will think the heat is off, and as such be much more likely to drop his guard and tip his hand. That was your idea, Johnny, and a bloody brilliant one. So now it's my turn to go in and stir up the pot as only Sheila Donner can. You've briefed me on the suspects, and a nominal bribe got me a look-see at Costello's morgue photos. Only wish I'd seen that educated fireball at work. Good chance someone taped it. Someone's always taping everything in New York. Exactly. Great minds, Johnny. You know, Donner, you could be setting yourself up as this firebug's next target. No more than you might. I can handle it. So can I. And our scene shifts to outside of Mike Snow's residence, where we find that he and his girlfriend Rose Delaney have invited Johnny over for a barbecue. And can you go ahead and describe both Mike and Rose to us, Shane? I know I kind of glossed over Mike's appearance earlier.
So Mike, from the burn that happened in the first issue at the end, he has half of his face scarred from fire from when he was a teenager. He is wearing a black t-shirt and a cooking apron, and Rose has red hair, wearing a blue shirt, and is always very much attached to wherever Mike is.
And from all of her piercings and whatnot, would you say that she's kind of an alternative girl?
Yeah, she would be what they would have called an alternative girl, or like almost like what do they call them? The mall people.
The mall people? You make them sound
Yeah.
like Morlocks.
That's how people kind of look referred to them. I don't
You
know
mean
if you
like a
guys are.
mall rat?
Nah, 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 not quite like a mall rat. I don't know if you guys had a different name for them up in this area. They used to call them like the mall walkers or the mall people, and they were usually all the people with all of the piercings and stuff walking around the mall.
Huh. Yeah, I'm unfamiliar with what you're speaking of here. So, we see that Johnny and Mike and Rose are all enjoying a beer and they all clink their bottles together in a toast. Sorry for stealing that sound effect from you, Shane.
You did steal it from me.
And Mike says, To Johnny, still can't believe it. And how is Johnny dressed in this panel, Shane?
He's got a long sleeve undershirt with a black overshirt and jeans and a hat that goes all over his eyes.
Anyway, Johnny says, That I collared Firefox the other day? That she hated the department just because they wouldn't use some invention of hers, so she used it against them. Sounds thin. Classic villain motivation. Trust me. And Rose chimes in. I don't care if she was just irritable from quitting smoking. I'm glad it's over. Hence this little celebration. Thought you couldn't cook, Mike says. This isn't cooking. It's barbecue. Anyone can barbecue. And it isn't quite finished. Sheila Donner's been interviewing everyone at the station the last few days. Never cared for her style of tabloid journalism myself, and didn't think you did either, Johnny. But word is, you're the one who got her in the door. Yeah, thought if I got her inside on this one, she'd finally leave me alone. Get promoted to celebrity stalking Tony Stark or someone like that. Sounded like a plan at the time. And Mike continues flipping steaks and says, sounds like classic Johnny Storm. Doesn't matter. Lieutenant says play nice, we play nice. Soon enough will be yesterday's news and never hear from her again. Well, I spend enough time at the station. She doesn't talk to me. She's not much of a reporter. And she's not much of a reporter. She does talk to me. Let's just say the lieutenant can't tell me to play nice. And Mike pours some sauce on those steaks and says, he knows that, honey. Probably counting on it. Damn straight. That's what you get after 4 consecutive generations of firefighting Delaney's. Maybe someday you and Michael have a kid and make it 5. But at this comment, Rose deflates and says, not quite. Not consecutive. Damn, Rose, I didn't. Your heart defect. I forgot. I'm sorry. I mean, you got more heart than any 3 people I know, Rose. Honest. Mike's a lucky guy. Oh, Johnny, how could you? How could you flirt with me like that? What? And Mike joins in on this teasing Johnny and says, you are. You're flirting with her. No! And just when I thought you might be an okay guy. Uh, those steaks are done. Those are past done. They're well done. And that's my motto. Anything worth being done is worth being done well. And I certainly haven't treated you very well, Johnny. Even after you saved my life the other day with Firefox. Old habits, I guess. But I owe you an explanation at least. Something I should have told you a long time ago. And Mike's phone begins to go off.
Yep, with a vrang vrang.
And Rose picks it up and says, Mike, it's Palmer. Big blaze on Ditmars. The Alexi Diner? That place is a grease pit, like walking into napalm, and the exposure to the neighboring apartments. Go. Already told him you're on the way. Knew I was going to have to order takeout anyway. And Mike turns to Johnny and says, you want to come? Put all your training to use? Yeah. Yeah, that'd be great. And Mike and Johnny take off, but Mike leaves his phone at the grill and it rings.
Yep, vrang vrang.
And Rose answers it and says, geez, Palmer, give that man 5 minutes, will you? He just went out the door. But it's not Marco Palmer who's on the other end of the line. Who is it, Shane?
Oh, it's none other than Sheila Donner.
Who says, that's nice to know, Miss Delaney, but this isn't Marco Palmer. My name's Sheila Donner from the Public Eye News Show, and oh, I've heard all about you, Donner, and maybe you've heard this story is over. They caught the person who killed Vinny and made that fireball. Yes, I did hear, but I don't believe half of what I hear unless if it's on the telly. Everyone's been very gracious with their time and information, and if you could be too, I'd appreciate it. Won't take a minute. 1 minute, one question. I understand you were there at Mr. Costello's, incineration. Were you also present when the fireball? No. Bye. Strange, because I tracked down a video of that incident shot by a civic-minded individual, and it very clearly shows you in the crowd, and not looking too happy, I might add. And we see Sheila in her apartment, and on an old tube television, she is watching footage from the fire, which clearly shows Rose in the crowd. I feel like in the last 1 or 2 episodes that we covered this, I brought up that I thought Rose was in the crowd, despite her denying that she was there.
You did it last issue. Yes, you called it out.
Okay, so I wasn't crazy, and this was not Carl Kessel or Scotty Young making a mistake.
Yeah.
And really, shame on us for thinking that this creative team didn't know how to craft a mystery properly.
Yeah.
And Rose continues, I'm sure you're mistaken, and I'm sure I'm not. But here's a thought. Why not show it to your friends at the firehouse and let them decide? Of course, then you'll have to explain why you never told them you were there. I interviewed the entire shift, Miss Delaney. None of them remembers you saying one word about the fireball. For days, the biggest topic of conversation at the station. Everybody's got their opinions and theories. Everyone but you. Why is that, Miss Delaney? What are you trying to hide? And on that note, our scene shifts to Alexi's diner, which is currently in the process of going up in flames as the FDNY attempt to hardcore douse it using hoses from ladders. And Lieutenant Matson, front and center, yells, "Get more foam on her. She's still heating up. And make sure that apartment building's evacuated. Clark, Han, you read me? You in position?" And we see Clark and Han on a neighboring rooftop, also with hoses. Clark says, "Say the word, Lieutenant." And Hans responds, "Come on, Clark. Everybody knows grease is the word." But what happened, Shane?
Boom! As the building really takes off with an explosion from the grease fire.
And Matson over the radio yells, "Clark, Han, report. You okay?" And Han says, "Better than when I ate at that place." "Yeah, and there was some hurlage that night, too. Got some hot spots here, Lieutenant. Time to work our magic." But what does Clark see above?
Sees Johnny come flaming into the scene and into the building and out of the building.
And Johnny hovers above the blaze and says, "Got a few tricks of my own. Think you'll really like the next one. Watch, nothing up my sleeves." And Johnny begins to absorb the fire from the building. And this very much puts strain on him as he does so. But once he completely does, he looks to calm himself and then stares up from the blaze into the night sky before taking off into the upper atmosphere, where he does what, Shane?
He lets all of that fire out in one giant burst. It looks like a giant fireball in the sky. Really lights up all of New York City one really bright sunny day in the middle of the evening there.
It's like a miniature sun.
Yeah.
And Johnny, having released all this flame, begins to float down towards his firefighter friends, who let up a cheer.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a little more enthusiastic than that, Shane.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Ah, there we go. And Han says, "Aw, you lied to us, man. Said you couldn't absorb flames." "Told you I'd seen pictures of him doing it. Who you trying to fool, fool?" And Johnny flames off and says, "No one. I can't absorb fire. Isn't easy. Can't can't hold it long. Takes a lot out of me. What I meant before, I can't fix the damage. Can't make it look like the fire never happened." And Marco Palmer says, "Can't argue that, but what I want to know is, what if you resist the urge to purge those excess BTUs?" Shane, what are BTUs?
Oh, it's a standard by what they use for heat and cool dynamics. I don't remember what it actually stands for. There's
So
a
it actually stands for British Thermal Unit.
yeah. Uh,
But yeah, you were correct as far as what they measure.
yeah, I'm well versed in the BTUs.
And Johnny responds to Palmer with, "I don't know, and honestly, I don't want to find out." Lieutenant Matson approaches with a cell phone and says, "Storm, call for you." "Must be my sister. Who else could track me down out here? Her husband's probably taking us to some alternate reality and she wants me to pick up milk on the way home. Hello? Oh, Donner, what do you want? What tape? She was there? But why didn't she say? And we see Sheila Donner in a vehicle driving down the freeway. She says, because Rose knows who set those fires. Maybe she just suspected it at first, but around the time of the fireball, she knew, and she knew it was the one person she would never turn in. And Johnny has sequestered himself behind a fire engine away from earshot of the other firefighters, and he says, Mike? No, that's impossible. He contacted me. He wants to find who's ever doing this. He wants to make sure he isn't caught. And what better way to do that than get his old high school chum to take charge of the investigation? It's bloody clear he's got a good deal of influence over you, Johnny. And if he can get the Human Torch to say there's no accounting for these fires, or better yet, someone else did them, connect the dots, mate. How'd he get that hellacious scar on his face? And Johnny whispers to himself the lie of flash powder. You don't believe that, and neither do I. And then he gives a pass to the Olympics to become a fireman. Doesn't add up in my book. He he did say he learned a lot about fire over the years. Why it does what it does. How it's got to be controlled. Good to know if you've got pyrokinetic abilities, I'd say. And you talked to Rose about this? She confirmed it? She rang off the instant I mentioned it. I'm on my way over there now. Snow's with you? Yeah, somewhere. Helping with the cleanup, maybe. All yours, mate. Try not to burn down half the town bringing him in. Guess you two have more in common than you thought, I. Yeah. And Johnny walks around the ambulance that he was behind. It wasn't a fire engine. And he hands the cell phone back to Lieutenant Madsen, who says, Should I have been eavesdropping? Wouldn't make things any better. Where's Mike? Left right after you two got here. Said he was going to let you have all the fun this time. Then he went back home, wanted to surprise Rose. And Johnny, without a word, flames on and takes off into the air and arrives back at Mike's backyard. And what does he find here, Shane?
He finds that the area where he was earlier having a barbecue with Mike and Rose was engulfed in flame. He just gets to a smoldering pile of ash when he gets there.
And he finds a melted cell phone that he picks up and says, He caught her on the phone. Damn it. Donner's right. And Johnny walks into the house for a moment before returning to the back porch and says, Empty, and nothing burning inside. So where'd you go, Snow? Where'd you take her? And our scene shifts to outside the Empire Fire and Safety Supply warehouse, which is a large manufacturing building that's surrounded by a chain link fence topped with barbed wire. And we see that the gate's been abandoned and the alarm at the door has been disengaged. And who do we find wandering down the aisles of crates inside, Shane?
Oh, Mike Snow walking through this Indiana Jones warehouse.
But he comes across a familiar silhouette and says, Who? And Johnny flames on and says, Surprise, Snow? Shouldn't be. You practically gave me directions. Not that you made it easy. And we see Johnny flash back to the backyard, and he examines the burn spot where he finds a charred business card. Not that you made it easy, considering your backyard's new charboiled decor. But then I noticed something in your grill. Looked like a business card, all burned up but mostly intact. Had to have gone in there after you cooked. It wouldn't have been any use to anyone else. But the ink burned a little hotter, scorched the paper a little deeper, and I could see the difference. Guess you forgot I could do that. I almost did too. Rose left that card behind as a clue, didn't she? And you torched it. Yes. Oh, you're just Mr. Total Regret, aren't you? You know what? I think it's time to finish what we started back in high school. And this incenses Mike, who looks to be charging towards Johnny, when suddenly flame that is not Johnny's catches his attention from out of the corner of his eye, and he turns to it, saying, "Huh?" And what does he see, Shane?
He sees Rose with flaming fists and her eyes lit up.
Back off, Storm. I'm the one you want. I'm the one with the powers. Concluded next issue. Wow, Shane. What do you think there, bud?
Um, if I didn't know that it was Rose from issue 2, it would have been more exciting.
What tipped you off back in issue two?
The fact that she was always around them. So the fact that she showed up at the fireball and or no, that was issue 3 she showed up at the fireball, right? Issue 2 was the way she stared at the guy before he fully burned. And I was like, there's only one person staring at him, and that he burned from the inside when you get into issue 3. So I was like, it's her, and then she was at the fireball. So like I saw this coming and I actually was excited for one page when I was like, "Oh, Mike Snow did not see that, but that makes sense." And then that would have been really cool. And then I was like, "Oh no, they went with the low-hanging fruit." This is like when they use the death card for any time they bring up tarot and they're like, "Oh no, you have the death card." And then the person dies 2 minutes later in the movie.
Which that isn't even what the death card means in tarot, is my understanding.
It doesn't. There's way worse cards in there, but like that's the trope. So, yeah, I have literally my notes. I was disappointed because I knew she was the villain from issue 2. I wish they went with the snow because that would have been a cooler angle. But I can't wait to see how the next issue ends with the fire on fire fight because how the lighting works, like looks, especially in this one with that digital. I'm not always a big fan of the digital coloring, but they have done such a good job with like the fire on the ambience around the fire that I really want to see like the flame on flame in the warehouse.
And you very well still might. Nice eye for detail there, Shane. Really, really admire that you were able to pick up on those hints. And yeah, those little things that we thought were mistakes sprinkled throughout the series. No, they were just, Rose covering her tracks, either telling lies or lies of omission in this case. And yeah, little red herrings. I know you're disappointed that your culprit ended up being the person you suspected all along, but I feel like, laying out clues throughout a story like this is very important. And, good eye to detail, but I also think that Kessel and Young did their jobs here with that.
I do have one other thing that I did want to bring up.
Hmm.
I did like going back to like the coloring and how this goes. Any of the times that Johnny plays detective in this, they always do the flashbacks in black and white, and I think that that's really cool to just emphasize how much this is like somewhat of a detective story.
You were saying about how they did the fire ambiance and everything. I think the Studio F colors on this entire series have been the best use of digital coloring I have ever seen, and especially the best, well, maybe not ever seen, but it's for the time, I think that they did it extremely well. They really nailed this book.
Yeah, I'm wondering if they went over budget. Like this reminds me of like early Batman the animated series where they were just paint. They're like, yeah, I know this is more expensive, but we want it to look pretty. That's what it kind of like.
Well, you got to remember back in the mid 90s, Marvel had purchased Malibu Comics and they got their hands on, and well, I should say the entire reason they purchased Malibu was to get their hands on their coloring process because that was Malibu's big deal. And initially, that was the whole theme behind the Marvel Knights imprint was getting superstar creators and having all their works handled with this Malibu coloring process. But I feel like it's since that point spilled out into this book.
Yeah, this, like I said, the coloring in this book is I again don't really like digital coloring that much, but this is phenomenal digital coloring.
Now, I'm going to take it back because I said I was to the synopsis on this issue. So, Gonna take a little umbrage with the line, and what pyro powers does he have that Johnny Storm doesn't? So I say pronouns are important here. They really put a red herring in that line by saying he. Granted, I know they don't want to give away the gender of the culprit, but they'd already set up that Firefox is female.
Hmm.
Rose ends up being the actual antagonist. They could have used they, kept some mystery to it. That's all I'm saying. Because as it stands here, it's just blatantly incorrect.
Yeah, no. I agree they could have used she because Firefox was captured and it did end up being Rose.
So, you start with Fantastic Frame this week, Shane. What do you got for us?
Oh, I have it feels like cheating, but I have page 17, the big splash page. Going back to that lighting, because you have the city in the background that's just got like black buildings with little, you see the lights lit up. But right here where he's at, especially like the rooftops that he's just going over, is super lit up to the right, more gently lit on the left. And you can, the front of it, because there, light there has the black shading. It's just a great piece of like shading and Johnny being flamed on. And my only complaint is kind of the sky, but I get what they were going with there. Otherwise, this is like a perfect page for me.
I like the sky, honestly, here, Shane. That looks like watercolors, and I think it really adds to the fact that he is in close proximity to a burning building. Also the fact that night has definitely been encroaching. So even that sky, I think, really makes this page just pop. Excellent choice here.
What's yours, buddy?
So I went with page 12, panel 7, which is where Johnny is absorbing the flame. Everything from how the inks put him in silhouette against the gradient, which is used to illustrate the blaze against the night sky. It just looks absolutely majestic. Might be, and this is a high bar, but I'm gonna put it out there. Might be one of my top three images of the Human Torch.
You know, if that's a t-shirt, I'm wearing it. Let's put it that way. For sure.
I mean, this
Uh,
is this is super cool.
you could make that a poster and that'd be a super cool poster. So that's an example of one of those other page, like other panels that you wish that there wasn't other stuff around and you could just screenshot and have for life.
Desktop wallpaper? Yeah, I'd be
Yeah.
down for it.
Scotty Young, do me a favor.
Yeah, I'm really curious if he still has the original art for this somewhere, or who does, because I would love to see it. That actually, this whole book, considering how much we talk about how much the inks and the coloring really make it, I would like to see the original panels without those details.
Oh, like a work in progress book.
Yeah,
Like so pencils on one side, inks on the other. That'd be sick.
particularly with this book, because I feel like this is the entire artistic creative team firing on all cylinders. At least until we get to my grim grumbling.
Okay, well, what's your grim grumbling, bud?
So my grim grumbling is page 21, panel 3, the last page and last panel of this issue. So I'm gonna be honest with you here. This was in contention for my fantastic frame and probably would have had a decent shot for it, except I just couldn't get past how big Rose's shoes are.
Your shoes are like massive for sure.
Like these are Hank McCoy, if not Ben Grimm levels of foot size. And
Uh,
I want to be very clear that this isn't me saying that Scotty Young can't draw feet. It's just that in proportion to the rest of Rose Delaney, it's awkward at best, and it just pulled me out of the image when I really got to looking at it.
it's the Captain America boots.
They're not Buccaneer boots, they're shoes.
No, from the Fantastic Four stuff that we read.
You
Volume
mean
two.
The Nick Fury boots?
Oh, the Nick Fury boots. Yeah, the Nick
Yeah.
Fury boots. They're the Nick Fury boots.
And if anybody would like to hear us complain about those, we covered Fantastic Four Volume 2, the first six issues, which were heavily featured Nick Fury and his ridiculously large, impractical boots. That was episodes 7, 12, 16, 20, 25, and 30. What about you, Shane? What did you pick for your grim grumbling this week?
We're gonna go to page 8. We're going to panel 10, and it's the burnt steaks. I don't care if they're in a comic. It's a waste of a steak. Don't you ever burn a steak. Don't even cook it if you're gonna burn it. Not worth it.
Hey, Mike Snow's just living up to the phrase "you are what you eat," and
Well
he's well
done.
done.
No, no, no,
Little extra crispy,
no, no, gross. No.
charbroiled.
I was so mad. I was so mad when I got to that panel. Like that was the first thing I had written down. I was like, I hate it.
That's entirely fair.
Those were
That's
nice looking steaks. And he
it
ruined
triggered
them.
you, man. I get it. I get it. Oh, how about your cosmic cliffhanger this week, Shane? What do you got?
I went with the one that I felt was the one you kind of had to go with, but I don't know what you went with. So I went with page 19, panel 5, which is when right after Mike's walking down this the panel before he's walking down that long hallway of boxes, if you will, and just sees the shadow, which we do know is Johnny, but you don't know what Johnny's going to do from there. Because at this point, Johnny doesn't know about Rose, and he is thinking that Mike Snow used him. Johnny has been known to be a hothead and just act out. So for him to like when you go to the next one, of course he flames on, but he doesn't like just straight up go swinging. I was impressed. It shows a lot of character growth. What was yours, bud?
So you said you felt like you were cheating earlier, and I definitely feel like I'm cheating now. But I gave it to page 21, panel 3, which again was the same thing I picked for my grim grumbling. But here I am also picking it for my cosmic cliffhanger. I have serious reservations about doing so because I just don't like picking the same panel for multiple subjects. But it's really hard not to, as we're left with the reveal that Rose is our primary antagonist, and she is ready to throw down with Johnny by the looks of that last panel.
Yeah, that was really hard for me. I was going between the two, but the Johnny in Shadow, because you don't know where Johnny's coming from yet, that's just one out because we've seen Johnny overreact earlier in this book, and we've seen Johnny kind of grow from there. And it was just nice to see the character growth for me in the next panel. So MFP, most fantastic player, if you will.
Well, it's probably going to be no surprise because it is his book, but I went with Johnny this week. Because not only does his ruse lead to Sheila being able to really investigate things and catch Rose off guard, but he also does absorb the diner blaze. However, those two, even though they put him in the lead from everyone else, what really put him over the top for me was that he did that bit of detective work in Snow's backyard to be able to track down both Mike and Rose by examining how the ink burned on that scorched business card. It was definitely a neat trick, and it definitely worked for this, mystery story that Kessel and Young are doing. Who was yours, Shane?
I went with Sheila Donner.
She was my runner-up, but go for it.
So I did put reluctantly, she is my mine, but because she was willing to set herself up as Firefox to get this whole story going, and then went in and did that investigation into the the fire department, and she was the one that kind of figured out that it was between Mike and Rose, though she thought it was Mike. She was the one that tipped Johnny off to the fact that it was, well, Mike, but it ended up being Rose, obviously. And then she was the one that did the detective work to find that video of Rose in the crowd at the fireball. So a lot of what Johnny does post the fire, like, because Johnny does cool things and obviously gets rid of the flames, awesome superhero stuff. Usually would have picked Johnny, but I went with Sheila because I felt like she did the little footwork stuff to make Johnny really rise to that next level of the hero of the story.
I completely understand that argument. Can't take anything away from it. Well, true believers, if you want to check out this story for yourself, it has been reprinted twice. The first trade paperback was simply titled Human Torch Burn, and it was released back in April 2009. And then we also had Human Torch by Kessel and Young, the complete collection, which collected all 12 issues of this Human Torch series that was published in July of 2014. You can also find it on Marvel Unlimited or in the back issue bin of your local comic book store. Always important to support your LCS. Next week, Shane, what do we got coming up?
Oh, it's week 3. We're back to Burn?
We are, and we were left with quite the cliffhanger last time we touched on John Byrne's run. So next week we will be able to see how the Fantastic Four deal in their meeting with Ego the Living Planet as we cover Fantastic Four Volume 1, number 235, as Shane said, by John Byrne.
I'm sorry. It felt more fun to say it like that because we're reading Burn Part 5.
Yeah, nice pun. Nice pun.
Ah, yeah, I'm stoked. I totally forgot about the fact that we're going to Ego. Oh man, we're gonna have so much fun.
He's like the opposite of Skip Collins.
He is 100% the opposite of Skip Collins. Skip Collins is the worst.
And true believers, if you want to prep for that episode, we covered the issue preceding that story in episode 37, which was Fantastic Four Volume 1, number 234, The Man with the Power. And you too can decide what your opinions of Skip Collins are.
I assume it's also going to match ours, but maybe not. Um,
Well, true believers, your feedback, as always, is important to us. We would highly appreciate it if you left us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. You can also leave a comment or a review on Spotify. As always, we recommend that you subscribe to us on your preferred listening platform so we can show up in your feed each and every week. If you would like to participate with the podcast, you can find us on Facebook at the Fantastic Four Fancast, where we encourage you to engage in FF-related discussions and share Fantastic Four content. We only ask that you adhere to our group rules, the most important of which is to be respectful of your fellow group members. You can also follow us on Instagram at Fan4Fancast. That is FAN, the number 4, FANCAST. And finally, you can email us with any feedback or suggestions at fan4fancast@gmail.com. Again, that is FAN, the number 4, FANCAST at gmail.com. Please note that any feedback we receive, we do reserve the right to read that on air. However, if you would like us not to, simply state so in your comment or email. Shane, what final thoughts do you have on this week's episode?
like I said before, I really am just excited to get to part 6. I'm glad we did this miniseries. I had way more fun with it than I thought I was going to. Like I
This
said,
was your choice.
I only peeked at the first issue, saw the like art style and clothes, and I was like, "Oh yeah, let's do this. Let's just have fun. Let's see how this goes." And I don't pre-read anything, you know that.
That is true. You don't. There's a lot of stuff that we do that I have read in full, or if we started, I read it in full well before we are finished with it. So
Yeah, I don't. I read everything day of. So like the only thing I did with this was looked at the first like 5 pages of Burn Part 1 because we talked about a few other books. So I read like the first couple pages of them all, and I'm like, I like how this is the art. I like the way this is going. We did just get off of like a really miserable book.
respectfully disagree, but go ahead.
I meant like, and you can't respectfully disagree about the tone of that book. That tone of that book is miserable. I wasn't saying the book is like, I understand that people like the book and you like the book. I'm saying the tone of that book is miserable. There's nothing positive about that book.
I get what you're saying with Ben Grimm losing an
Not
arm.
even just that, like the Veterans Hospital, there's so much miserable stuff in there. Doom just trying to treat Mole Man as like he's on the same level as Namor. The weird Namor Sue thing. That is a there's a lot of
It's
miserable
all,
stuff going on in that book.
and it can all be chalked up to the fact that Doctor Doom's is rewriting reality.
There's a lot of miserable stuff going on in that book.
Fair enough. I'm not going to say that your opinion is wrong here. It is a mixed bag.
Yeah. So this just seemed like it was going to be way more. I would say colorful. The colors are brighter, but that book is super colorful. So I can't even say like one, two, three, four is uncolorful because that book has some great coloring going on. So yeah, we're in a good spot here. Do you have anything else you want to add about this book?
Only the fact that I enjoy doing this show with you each and every week, and I highly anticipate our next meeting being able to talk more about the Fantastic Four. And we hope that you will join us next week as well, true believers. Until then, I'm Nate Charles for Shane Murray. We hope you stay fantastic.